Hey, everybody, this is Thomas Bryant. Today, I'm joined by my hostess with the mostest, my illustrious Matt Bradford. How you doing, Matt? Oh, no. We lost Matt already.
What a
Welcome
great
back.
time for the internet to drop out. Hey, Thomas, how you doing, sir? I need some insights into my network here, obviously. What's
I
happening?
think there might be a problem between you and us. I don't know where it is, but it's somewhere on that network.
Yep,
Uh,
somewhere in that networking cloud.
so,
So,
uh,
yeah, man.
I'm hanging in there. I'm pretty excited actually to talk about network insight today. I got my start in networking way back in the day, ripping out old Banyan Vine stuff and
Mm.
replacing it with all that cool Cisco gear. My, how we've come so
Yep,
far.
exactly. We're hooking up 3Com. We get new offices and all that stuff, and having to hook those into the 3Com hubs. I don't even think they were switches.
Oh,
Yeah, that
yeah,
was some good times there. But yeah, exactly. We've come really far. Networks have been virtualized. Everything's been virtualized. Everything but us, I guess. And we're going to be looking at yeah, be looking at the latest with vRealize Network Insight. 6.4 is the latest release.
yeah. And we're joined today by Mr. Matt Just. How you doing, Matt?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, Matt.
It's good to
Welcome.
have you here.
What's
How
that?
are things up north? You're up in the northern area. Is it warm or cold up there these days?
Yeah, I'm up in Michigan, so it's we're finally starting to get some cold weather,
Oh,
cooling off.
fantastic. Well, things are heating up though here with VRNI or vRealize Network Insight. Obviously, we had VMworld just a couple of weeks ago, and we had a lot of people actually reach out and say, "Hey, what's new? What's going on with all the vRealize products?" So we figured, who better than you to really kind of tell us what's the latest and greatest in the Network Insight world. So please go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, no problem. So with vRealize Network Insight 6.4, which is what we announced at VMworld 2021, we've done obviously some new feature enhancements. As you guys may be aware, vRealize Network Insight is a product that has new features and new enhancements released on a quarterly basis. So we're constantly adding new improvements and features, integrations with third-party products and other VMware products, obviously, to provide that end-to-end visibility from the data center to the branches to the cloud within vRealize Network Insight. So with vRealize Network Insight 6.4, some of the new features that we've added, key features to focus on, are going to be things like support for NSXT Federation. So obviously with NSXT Federation, having that visibility of being able to see across multiple deployments of NSXT across various infrastructure, various locations, as we should say, that unifies the overlay networking and security that NSX T brings to the infrastructure is key to have that visibility and being able to understand how it's performing from a global perspective, and then also to be able to have visualization into things like path mapping and so on. So if you're doing troubleshooting or analysis, want to understand how things are performing across your federated NSXT environments. That's one of the new key features that we've added here within vRealize Network Insight.
So
So
let me ask you, I'm a non-networking guy. What is NSXT Federation? Is this the fabled stretch layer 2 that we're finally getting, or what is that?
yeah, so it's stretch layer 2, but it also incorporates layer 3 routing also. So it allows us to kind of the whole goal here is, instead of having to do separate NSXT deployments in each one of your data centers. So if you've got a data center in the US and one in EMEA and so on, and instead of having two separate independent deployments, you have the capabilities now of adding that global federated support with NSXT Federation. So it forms a global manager that allows you to manage not only your overlay networking, but also your security policies, applying firewall rules and so on. So centralized management of multiple data centers, locations, could even be branches if you're deploying NSX T within your branches and so on. So that's the key focus for Federation, and that's some new features that's been evolving from the NSXT side over their past couple releases. And obviously one of the key things with customers that are utilizing and want to utilize something like vRealize Network Insight to visualize the infrastructure to because you throw it out there, it's like I've been in network engineering for over 20 years. You get into something like you're so used to going in and racking and cable switches like you guys were talking about and doing all that stuff and configuring routers and switches and going into the old command line and doing all that, which I still enjoy. But you when you get into overlay networking for somebody that has spent so much time working with physical boxes and mounting and racking and cabling and doing all this stuff and deploying these large infrastructures and data centers, it's learning NSX and so on is so much easier with like vRealize Network Insight because of the capabilities of how we can actually visualize and paint that picture and keep it in a similar fashion to how physical networking and underlay networking devices are deployed within our infrastructure. So for individuals that like network engineers and architects and so on that are managing these infrastructure network admins, it really kind of paints that picture that allows them to see that same unison across both infrastructures and really helps kind of grasp and understand the concept of how the overlay networking infrastructure works, and really isn't that much different from the underlay other than it's obviously running in software. So and that just with NSXT as far and so on with the Federation components, it's key to be able to have that, like I said, with that visualization, especially when you're now managing multiple NSXT deployments across the multiple data centers. So within vRealize Network Insight, I can share my screen here really quick, and I can show kind of a couple new features that we've added around Federation. So one of the things that we've done is obviously within Network Insight, we have the capability of monitoring multiple NSX deployments across various infrastructures. And inside our demo environment here, one of the things that you'll notice is as you scroll down under all of your NSX deployments, you'll now see the option for the NSX Global Managers. So, one of the key things to call out too for anyone that's actually adding their global infrastructure, their federated infrastructure for NSXT Federation into vRealize Network Insight is you don't have to add the global managers in as a data source. You simply just add your existing NSXT deployments, and if you have Federation enabled in NSXT, Network Insight will automatically see that and detect what is the global managers and start forming that unified view of the various deployments. So here we have an option. Obviously we can see our global managers. We can click into our global managers to kind of get an overview of what do we have deployed within the infrastructure from a NSXT Federation perspective. So this is painting, how many firewall rules I've got configured, how many, layer 2 segments. So when you're talking, with a stretch layer 2. So here we can see the various layer 2 segments that we've got configured across our multiple data centers. And we're providing things like the global virtual network identifiers to identify each one of those, and what they're tied to, what policy segments they belong to. And then we can even click in further to each one of those logical segments to look at performance metrics to see if we're having packet drops, latency, and so on. So bringing that unison in is one of the key views. And then allowing us also to see the things like the property. So I can see what local managers, so these are going to be like my individual NSXT managers in my 2 sites in EMEA and US that are federated. And that's also showing me my locations here. So I can see which locations are in my NSXT Federation deployment. And then bringing in kind of like a global overview of how many virtual machines do I have that are, associated or deployed within my NSXT infrastructure at each location. So I can see, my US, my EMEA location, how many virtual machines, and I can click in and look into each one of these from the global manager view. And then we're also monitoring, performance and alerting and so on. So as things, as we're looking at the federated infrastructure, if we're seeing changes and modifications at the global level, not just at the individual NSXT level, we can actually see things like, firewall rule changes and so on. New entities that are discovered, modifications, add, move, change, tracking within vRealize Network Insight. So this is our, one of the initial, like I said, is a new feature. And as you know, with the vRealize Network Insight, we're constantly adding, as I mentioned, new features. So, I expect to see this grow as far as additional widgets to say that are going to be populated within the Global Manager dashboard. The other component to really kind of focus on too, that really, brings into view the NSXT Federation capabilities within Network Insight is looking at things like VM to VM pathing. So this allows us to visualize what the paths look like across that federated network that's stretching across multiple locations. So in this case, we can look at it kind of like from a layer 3 perspective, and then we can also look at it if we're just doing stretch layer 2. So here is an example of where I've got, a vCenter as a demonstration that is actually deployed within a data center. And we can map it out. We can actually show how this vCenter is connected to a virtual machine, in this case, a web front end for an application that's actually in the EMEA data center. So we can see the multiple hops that it takes across both, things like the VLAN backport groups, physical NICs, hopping through physical underlay devices, VRFs. This can be, multiple vendor. This just happens to be an Arista 7050. And then we can see as it goes in and hits the NSXT federated infrastructure and starts to route across the tier zeros, the tier ones, the flow passing through the tier one, or I'm sorry, the tier zero firewall, extending across the federation, the federated segment that's going across the locations, and being able to incorporate views into things like, the RTEPs. So, we're getting into replication and so on across the infrastructure, being able to click in and view details around the actual NIC types and configuration data, and then clicking even further to look at how things are performing and making sure that, our tunnels are up across the federated locations. Similar to just like any type of VM to VM path mapping, you also have that capability of clicking in and being able to look at, firewall rules that are configured in path between the source and the destination, which is obviously key when you're looking at from a security posture perspective, or maybe even troubleshooting to determine, do I have a firewall rule that may be in place that might be impacting the communication between the source and destination? So this is giving us an overview of all the firewall rules that are in path globally between our source and destination virtual machines. And we can enable the path details here, obviously, to be able to see if I wanted to do a hop by hop and be able to see everything numbered out and see each hop that is going across, whether it's virtual infrastructure or ports, across even the underlay ports, as an example, to our destination. The other thing to show really quick around Federation is, I talked about the capabilities of looking at, just stretch layer 2. So in this case here, here's another example of a path that's across two different federated sites, both in, so we can see EMEA and the US. So we can see two different virtual machines that just happen to be just utilizing layer 2. So we can see our web and our app logical segments, or NSXT logical segments, that are stretched across the locations and the traffic that's just going through that overlay rather than passing through a layer 3 underlay and utilizing switching infrastructure, routing infrastructure as an underlay component. So this is going to be strictly just stretch layer 2 communication, and then utilizing the NSX tier 0 and tier 1 routers to actually do the routing in the overlay rather than in the underlay. So the other thing that we'll talk about, another feature that we've added here within vRealize Network Insight 6.4 is going to be around the capabilities within SD-WAN. So we've been growing our SD-WAN integration with VMware SD-WAN, which, as you may be aware, used to be VeloCloud, and which obviously we acquired them, and I want to say at least 3 or 4 years ago. And we've been working on expanding our visibility and providing that unison and so on within our multiple deployments across branches, work from home users, obviously, with today, with the way that everything's shift and the companies moving to moving to work from home models. So this allows us to, bridge and provide that full visibility across the SD-WAN infrastructure. So what we've done is in 6.4, we've added some new, what we refer to as intents. So we introduced intents back when we integrated the acquisition of Veriflow into vRealize Network Insight, and that allowed us to be able to define business policies or intents across our infrastructure that we're looking to meet, and have that capability of being able to determine, are we meeting those intents or are those intents failing? So as an example, within the SD-WAN intents that we have configured here, which we can see the list of the intents, these are showing various intents. We can see what their scope is, the metric type that it's actually analyzing across the edges and the infrastructure. And then we can also see if these intents are passing or failing, along with how many active alerts and so on for each one of the intents that I've got configured within the infrastructure. So some of the new intents that we've introduced within vRealize Network Insight 6.4 is going to be around application utilization. And this focuses really on, things like traffic rate and bandwidth utilization across all the applications that are being accessed across our SD-WAN infrastructure. We can also define business intents as far as, how much jitter do we find, accessible or, tolerable within specific applications, and defining that across all of our uplinks that are connected to each one of our edges. So this is going to be like our ISP uplinks, our LTE links that are connected to our edges. Same thing goes with latency across those uplinks, utilization percentage, and then lastly, QoE degradation. So QoE in the VMware SD-WAN world is quality of experience. So that's basically kind of looking at things like transactional data, video, voice, and doing analysis across those from a performance perspective. And then also looking to see, how are things looking as the ISP links are connected to the edges, and then what are the enhancements that the edge is adding, things like forward error correction and jitter buffering and so on, to enhance that QoE experience for each one of the applications at each one of the edges. So this is actually allowing us to define intents that what we can say are an acceptable degradation before we're going to start to see impact across those applications that we want to be alerted across. And then over here, when I go over, I can come over and click on things like impacted entities, and then I can choose the intent that I want to check to see from an impacted entity perspective. So when I click on, a intent, it's going to show me things like what is the edge. So this is, our Washington data center, the Detroit branch, and then I can see what is the ISP IP address. Things like which Ethernet interface or SFP interface that the ISP is connected to within the edge. And then, more particularly, the actual application that's being impacted, in this case, across the VeloCloud link application. And then I can see the total the alert variation. And then I can see if any of these events are open or closed. And you can see multiple applications, things like Cisco NetFlow, Ubuntu traffic, Amazon Web Services, SD-WAN management, and so on. So we'll list out those applications and which sites and which specific ISP link we're actually seeing performance issues. And then we can click into any of these that are open to go further into those metrics and utilize for visibility and troubleshooting purposes. And then again, it's going to show things like threshold violations, we could have a threshold set at a specific percentage, and then we can come across and do analysis and see when we've exceeded that bandwidth utilization specifically for this specific application.
Now, will these automatically close if this kind of self-remediates over time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everything is dynamic in nature. So they will self-close. And this is just kind of showing you again the alert when it, how long it was open. I can see that it is closed. These will clear. But I do have, obviously the 2 open ones. But we do store everything from a historical standpoint. So that way, if you want to reference any past events to do, to try to take a look and see what was going on at that time. Something not all the time do end users call in to file a ticket right away. So they may call in and a week later and say, hey, by the way, we could go, I was having problems with Zoom. And you can come in and you can go across and take a look and see what was going on and see if it's something that may be an issue that may continue or maybe, keep tabs on it and see if that continues to happen at that specific location and determine, what action you want to take to actually resolve that issue.
Oh, that's fascinating. But I don't know about you, Matt, but I've never had users like that. Mine always tell me right away things are a problem.
You would hope so, but that doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah. By the way,
not my experience, Thomas. They just opened tickets to tell me what a great job I was doing.
We all wish.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always the network. Blame the network.
And that's where tools like Network Insight come into play, right? I mean, you're showing your proof of innocence here, honestly, with just getting these insights. I mean, seeing the NSXT Federation, right? You've got so many layers upon layers of obfuscation now that things are virtualized, and just being able to jump in and see all that stuff. This is such an incredible product.
Yeah, and that's the power of vRealize. Our management solutions that we have is being able to provide that level of visibility and monitoring management, everything from day 0 to day 2, and tying all that in, whether it's virtual infrastructure, physical infrastructure, SD-WAN, obviously, as we're taking a look at, even getting into obviously containers and Kubernetes. So a lot of great enhancements and features within 6.4. Some of the other things that I'm not going to get into from a demo perspective that we can talk about that we've added in 6.4 that are going to be useful are we've got a lot of demand. Obviously, we're not just focused on obviously VMware products. Obviously, we have deep integration with all VMware products across the board when it comes to networking and security. But we have customers that also need to have that visibility also into third-party integration. So we've added support for things like Cisco ASR routers, so your aggregate routers that are going to be utilized at the edge level, whether at a branch or at a data center. Same thing with the Cisco ISR, the integrated services routers for their 4000 series to be able, and those are going to be used more at the branch level, maybe at the data center level, but being able to look at the performance metrics, how they're performing. And then we tied that into the network assurance and verification feature set, which is obviously what came from the Veriflow acquisition, that allows us to be able to do that full topology overview, end-to-end mapping, layer 2, layer 3 performance, and then being able to see and define intent, similar to what I just demonstrated with the capabilities around the intents and SD-WAN, defining those intents across the infrastructure. A couple other things that we've done. We've added support for Cisco Nexus 2000 series fabric extenders. They're kind of old, but we do have a lot of customers that are still utilizing them within their infrastructure. So key added support there. We also another great integration that we're doing is NSXT firewall with virtual distributed switches. So NSXT Impactor, as they refer to it, allows obviously the capability of deploying distributed firewall at the VDS level, particularly for more security focus, just getting into microsegmentation. And so to kind of pair with the feature sets and how they're actually paired in a bundling perspective when selling NSX across to various customers, this allows us to more closely relate and integrate with those feature sets just from a security perspective, if that's my focus only is specifically around distributed firewalling within my VDS environment. Lastly, I think from looking at any other real key things to call out, and we do have obviously the stuff all detailed in the what's new and vRealize Network Insight 6.4 technical blog. So we go into more deep conversation and articles, and then we also have some offline demos that are included in there that kind of show some of the new feature sets. Are going to be things like we've added capability to support vRealize Network Insight cloud inside Canada. So that's been a big request, obviously, with data sovereignty and being able to contain the data within the country of origin. So we now support Canada. We've added, and then we've expanded our footprint in Europe, and that from Central Europe perspective, and added support in Frankfurt. So that's really going to help out there from accessibility and obviously again increased performance times and so on for customers that are utilizing vRealize Network Insight Cloud within those regions. And then lastly,
obviously,
well, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, you're talking data sovereignty, and obviously there's a ton of data within vRealize Network Insight. And isn't there some new way to get all that data out?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've done is the capability of doing like things like streaming data bus for application changes and problems. So that allows individuals to go in and become subscribers to say utilizing various different software solutions to be able to receive that streaming data from vRealize Network Insight when it comes to things that are occurring within the infrastructure, whether it be application changes or problems within the application, and much more. So that's something new that we've also added in 6.4, on top of being able to utilize the RESTful API to be able to extract data from API calls or getting things like SNMP traps and so on, alerts from various data sources within the infrastructure.
Awesome. So just to summarize, if people want to learn more about all the new things for vRealize Network Insight, I mean, I know you mentioned the blog. Is there anywhere else you would recommend that they maybe check out or things that they could look at?
Yeah, so obviously there's a lot of different things. We have our vRealize Network Insight website on the VMware website that you can access. You can also, obviously we have blogs for each release, and then we also do dedicated blogs for a lot of these features that go deep dive. The hands-on labs are obviously a great resource. We're constantly updating the hands-on labs. So if you want to, have 24/7 access into an environment to be able to test out these new features, if you don't already own vRealize Network Insight, you can definitely take advantage of testing that out. And then you can also get into doing things like, or you can also utilize things like Pathfinder as an example. So Pathfinder allows us to be able, to share various solutions, obviously vRealize Operations, Log Insight, the whole vRealize family. And so you'll find a lot of different videos and information that's on Pathfinder for vRealize Network Insight. And then again, if you want to do a free trial and test it out in your own environment, we have free trials that you can do and sign up for the vRealize Network Insight Cloud, or if you want to do even a vRealize Network Insight on-premises deployment within your infrastructure, we also have free trials that allow you to test out all the great features that are bundled within vRealize Network Insight.
Awesome. And then just to kind of wrap things up about, let's say somebody wants to reach out and maybe find you. Where are you? Are you up on Twitter or Twitch? Where can people find you these days in social media land?
Particularly, from a social media perspective, the best way to reach out to myself is going to be Twitter, absolutely on Twitter. So I go by, my Twitter handle is at HighTechMatt. There you go. And also, honestly, I get a lot of interaction on LinkedIn also. So I'm on LinkedIn, and I do share a lot of content on LinkedIn, and that seems to be a lot of the industry folks and so on within the network and security realm and the cloud realm and so on are very interactive, it seems like, on LinkedIn, surprisingly.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Matt, for coming out today. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy man, so the features and everything that you showed us on vRealize Network Insight were pretty awesome. So, Matt, thank you again for coming. Mr. Bradford, do you have anything you want to close us out with, or?
No, I mean, other than, everything we mentioned is linked down below in the comments. So check those out. The What's New blog, the vRealize Network Insight, product page, where to find Matt, where to find Thomas, all of that stuff down below. Check it out. And Matt, thanks again, man. This was awesome. I love seeing Network Insight and a lot of cool stuff you guys are cooking up there.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. And for everybody out there in the internet world, we'll see you tomorrow. Matt, keep me honest. I forget who we've got tomorrow. It's
tomorrow is vRealize Log Insight. Thank you. Yes.
Yes, it's Log Insight. All right. Well, we'll
it's
see
a week
you all
of
tomorrow.
vRealize this. Enjoy. Thanks.